And it turns out that the more you are experiencing the illusion of duality, the illusion of being in opposition to the rest of the world, the more that one or the other sides of your brain is active, whereas the other side is relatively less active. And they call this condition brain lateralization. And so everyone that's sitting here in this room, to a certain degree, and many of you less than the general population because you've been using the Holosync soundtracks for some time, some of you, the left or the right side of the brain is more dominant than the other. And it turns out that the more dominant one or the other hemispheres is, the more you're going to be experiencing this illusion of duality, this illusion of separateness. So when you're experiencing fear, anxiety, depression, anger, paranoia, any of these emotional responses where you feel separate or in opposition, your brain is highly lateralized. When the brain begins to lose that lateralization, when it begins to synchronize, the two sides begin to work together, to the degree that that happens, you begin to experience things more in their oneness and in their unity. And you stop seeing and experiencing and responding to this seeming duality, this seeming contradiction between two sides. And you feel less in opposition to the rest of the world, to other people, and even to other aspects of yourself, because this duality happens internally to us as well. So the brain and how it functions has a lot to do with the way you experience this. So when the meditation teacher got through saying, you know, you're not experiencing your true nature because your mind is in the way, many thousands of years ago, they began to come up with methods for trying to alleviate that problem. And the most popular of those, the most effective of those, is meditation. So when the meditation teacher then would teach the student, the disciple, how to meditate, he would give them an aphorism or a mantra or a prayer or something to repeat, or ask them to watch their breath as they inhaled and exhaled, and in some way to focus on something. And it turns out that when you focus, when you bring your mind to one point and focus on one thing, such as your breath going in and out or a mantra, that causes the two sides of the brain to begin to communicate more. And as they communicate more, you relax. And the tension between polar opposites that makes up this duality thing we're talking about begins to relax. And it begins to go away, and you feel more calm, and you feel more peaceful, and you feel more in tune with other things. So as the student would meditate, as they would focus and bring their mind to this one point of whatever their object of focus was, the brain would synchronize. And as that happened, they would begin to feel better and feel less of this tension between polar opposites, less of this separation. Now what happens, as you all know, is that when you stop repeating the mantra or whatever your technique is and go back out into the world, the tension comes back, and you have to keep going back again and again and again to the meditation and gradually train the brain so that it can attain these states and stay in them all the time. Back in the 1970s, when the Maharishi was busy making TM, Transcendental Meditation, really popular. How many people here have practiced TM? A lot of people have done it in here. Well, TM, as you know, is a mantra meditation where that's the point of focus, although they tell you don't focus on this, just repeat it. But really it is a focusing kind of meditation. And Maharishi has a PhD from Oxford in physics and was always very interested, especially because he came to the West and was dealing with left brain Westerners a lot. He was very interested in not just the metaphorical, poetic types of explanations of reality that were from the tradition he came from, the Hindu tradition, but he was also interested in how this could be explained in a Western context, in a scientific context. So one of the things that he did was he had thousands of experiments done with meditators where they put electrodes on their heads and measured their electrical brainwave patterns while they were meditating, for instance. And they did many other experiments too. They did experiments with blood lactate level, which is a marker for anxiety. And they did experiments on what, if any, effect meditation had on various health problems. And there's at least 2 books about that thick that are full of studies that the Transcendental Meditation group did. The Menninger Clinic also did a number of studies, notably with a guy named Swami Rama, who I think he just passed away in the last couple of years. But he had an organization called the Himalayan Institute, which is back in, I believe it's in New York State. And he could do some pretty amazing things through controlling his mind. He could make his heart stop. He could stop breathing for extended periods of time, like an hour or something. And there were some pretty amazing things he could do. So the Menninger Clinic studied him, and they also hooked him up to electrodes and while he meditated to find out what was going on in his brain. So by the mid-70s, there was beginning to be a body of knowledge about the brain, electrical brainwave patterns, how electrical brainwave patterns related to different states, and what the electrical brainwave patterns were of not only of meditation, but also of enhanced creativity, super learning, and a number of other states. And it turns out that there is a very close correlation between the electrical patterns in the brain and a whole variety of states, and that as they studied these meditators, they found that they were developing the ability, and in some cases, like with Swami Rama, they had the ability to exert a great amount of volitional control over what happened in their brain, and that they could synchronize the brain and go into this state where they experienced, instead of duality, they experienced the oneness of everything, whenever they wanted to do it. So in 1973, a researcher named Dr. Gerald Oster published a paper in Scientific American called Auditory Beats in the Brain, which is a very dry reading. You can go, and it's in the October issue of Scientific American, and you can go and read it if you like. It reminds me of, I started reading Scientific American when I was in high school, and there's all these articles in it, like how the something salamander, how the certain chemical crosses the blood-brain barrier, and you think, why would anybody even care about that? It seems so abstruse and so, such a minor little detail, but they're learning something about something that'll lead to something else, and so on and so forth. But this article about auditory beats in the brain is kind of like that. When you read it, you kind of think, what is he talking about? But basically what he is talking about is that there is a way using sound to alter the electrical patterns in the brain. What he discovered was that when the brain is presented with tones of certain frequencies through the ears, and the tones are not exactly the same, but instead have a very minor difference, that in order to reconcile that difference, that a part of the brain called the olivary nucleus creates what they call a beat pattern in the brain that is derived from the difference between these tones. And that sets up what's called a standing wave in the brain, and the electrical patterns in the brain then resonate to that. And suddenly the entire brain is resonating to one pulse. Now usually what's happening is that there are various brainwave patterns going on in your brain all at the same time.